Welcome to our Weebly.
We have created a yearly plan for outdoor education for Year 10 students, and we've based it at a hypothetical school in Bendigo, which we've called Bendigo College. We're all going to go through each term briefly. So, Em, would you like to start off with term 1?
Thanks, Jazz. So during term 1, we're introducing students to outdoor education. By doing this, we're talking about different outdoor environments and the characteristics involved with those. We also talk about practical skills and allow some hands-on activities for those. These include things like pitching a tent or packing a pack. We then move into motivation for being in the outdoors, so personal motivation for being outdoors and also looking at society's motivation for being in the outdoors. Throughout the term, we are working on the students' personal development as well as their teamwork. We are discussing minimal impact strategies. We are looking at different types of media and how they portray the outdoors. We are looking at human and nature relationships from both an Indigenous and a European perspective. And lastly, we finish off with looking at outdoor education in the 21st century and how technology has affected that. For our assessment, they actually only have one in term 1, so that's a summative test at the end, which incorporates all the learning content throughout the entire term. So we're lucky enough to be able to go on a day trip in week 9, where we head to Quirke State Park. We'll be led by an Aboriginal elder hired by Parks Victoria, and they'll be guiding us around Indigenous culture around Quirke State Park. So now on to term 2. Thanks, Jazz.
Thanks, Em. So now that the students have had an introduction into outdoor education, they then move on to learning some skills that they can utilise not only within their studies but within their future as well. So some of the things they will be looking at are reading maps and navigation. So they'll be learning how to use compasses and navigating through either a course or in a real circumstance. They'll also be looking at weather, so reading weather charts. They'll also study flora and fauna and how to identify them using field guides. They will be looking at technical things such as knots, tying knots for different reasons. They'll also utilise these on their trips. So the first trip they'll be doing is a day trip, which is focusing around navigation and nature studies, and that will be held at Sedgwick Forest. Their second trip is a 3-day canoe trip, so they'll also be focusing on canoe skills prior to the trip and obviously on the trip. They have 2 major assessments throughout the term. The first one they'll work on from the very beginning, and that's a creative website. Each week they will add in information to show that they are prepared and they have the knowledge to take part on the trip. The second assessment is a final summative test at the end of the term. So that's term 2. Term 3.
Thanks, Jazz.
No worries,
the overarching theme of term 3 is sustainable living, with a particular focus on energy, water and waste. There's a couple of introductory lessons to those topics for the first 2 weeks, and then they start thinking about their trip, which is in week 4. For the trip, they go to Melbourne, where they get tours and have some hands-on experience into eco-friendly, completely sustainable organisations called Lina Farm and Sarah's Environment Park. So it's sort of an urban community service sort of trip to make them start thinking about some sustainable practices that are being implemented in society. That helps them relate to their major project, which is the main focus of the term. By the end of the term, they're expected to implement a sustainable solution to an issue that they've identified. So they'll begin the term by researching something that means something to them in their home, their school or their community. They'll identify the problem, formulate a solution, and then actually implement that solution by the end of term. There's a few assessment tasks that revolve around that major project. Term 4.
Thanks, Matt. Term 4 is a really big term for tying in everything we've done. The theme for the whole term is trip planning. So every week there is a focus. So for example, some of these focus could be minimal impact, safety, route planning, that sort of thing. Each week is working towards a portfolio in which they make decisions that impact their trip at the end of the year. So, for example, during route planning, they'll learn in class the basics of route planning, and then for a task as homework in their portfolio, they'll actually get a map of where we're going and draw where they think we should hike and where they think we should camp. So, as I said before, that all ties into the trip. We are hiking at Quirke for 2 nights, but the trip isn't laid out exactly at this point. The trip is open so that students can see the sites that they want to see, and also so that they can camp where they want to hike. That's pretty much everything for term 4. So I'm going to hand it back to Maya now, who's going to talk to you about our Weebly.
So luckily we've put all of this information in a Weebly that's easy to access all the different components. So up here in our justification you can find our rationale for the year plan. In our AusVels section we've actually put all of the AusVels in a singular table with a reference number, and they're referred to throughout the rest of the aspects on our page. Principles of learning and teaching, differentiated teaching, you can read about the different strategies we're using in there. In our lesson overview, if you click on the term, you'll find a term overview, just a really brief one of each one. If you go into it further, there's a more thorough and in-depth weekly overview, including learning activities, the standards, resources that are required, objectives, and where literacy, numeracy and things like that are incorporated. All of the trips that assessment items also can all be found under that tab, and it's written there for students to be able to read and use in a school setting. All the trips that we discussed previously can be found under the trips tab, and in the more information there's some forms for information for students and parents, and all the resources that we use to formulate this task and that could be used to implement in the future.
We hope you enjoy it.